So let's get started. So obviously you're here for optimizing your onboarding process. So a couple of things to help frame because on this call and webinar, I know we have different levels of experience in onboarding and leadership, and then also want to kind of frame this correctly for those who consume this later on that aren't here. So let's jump in. So the um, first slide I like to always start with is unfortunately the environment you're all probably very familiar with. Okay, so as I start here, let's frame what onboarding is today, right? And what are the challenges that has really metastasized over the last couple of years specifically. I've been in this environment for 25 years, but for sure in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of movement related to obviously the number of people. So each one of your businesses is going to be a little bit different, but I think you can map this to kind of your environment. So the left-hand side here is going to be your team, your company. Okay. So your company. And on the right is going to be the client prospect or the group, obviously, that you're onboarding. As you guys all know, the sales process now for many is very, very complicated and has a lot of stakeholders. So you got your original sales team members, you have SME, subject matter experts, you have other folks, obviously, from sales leadership. And then, of course, many people are including onboarding people in that last 25% of the sale because they're qualifying the deal. There's just a lot going on. So on the left-hand side, you got quite a few people from your team on a deal. You can do the math, but I guarantee you it's more than four. Right. And then on the right-hand side, it's camp run amok. Depending on what industries you're in, it's a lot of people. We have a lot of clients in like healthcare, finance, complicated manufacturing, professional services, any of these groups. On the client side or the new client side, you can have 10, 20, 30, 40 different individuals. It's not a fret that we have some prospects that have literally 40 people on a deal when it's a large deal. So inherently, we got a problem here, Houston, right? Ultimately, just like a rocket on a launch pad, it's very hard to get it started and firing because you got so many people going on. So you got a lot of risk on the handoff process, the onboarding process itself, and trying to get this, over the line ultimately, right? And so we're going to build more on top of this, but I always like to start with kind of the why or the environment is a big problem around this. And of course, for today's purposes, this injects a tremendous amount of risk uh, to successfully, obviously, onboarding, right? So ultimately, that's one of the biggest challenges. So let's also layer on top of that a lion's share of you listening to this call. Obviously, if you're in B2B onboarding, it requires a lot of information to be going back and forth. So we not only have a megaton of people, a lot of questions, all this stuff. We need to be moving a lot of information back and forth and expectations back and forth, meaning mutual action plans to checklist items, moving data, filling out forms, uploading templates, right? I mean, you guys know the hustle. You're here because you do this, right? But ultimately, that creates a lot of risk, right? And so you got a lot of people and you got a lot of things that have to happen. It's like the old Super Bowl commercial of herding cats, right? Like literally, this is what is going on. But again, related to the purposes of this one, what does that do? It injects a tremendous amount of risk, right? And so this is a huge challenge. And this is what's keeping you up at night. And by the way, you got to do more of this with less people and you want to onboard them faster. Okay. And many of you might be in the business of you onboard them once, but then later on you're selling them another module and you got to onboard them again and again and again. And so this is repeating over and over again. And that's very common in software sales or other kind of services like that or professional services. This is not a one-trick pony. You're going to do this 10 times with the client. Okay. Lots of risk, right, on the table here. You think I'm building up enough to this whole risk and measurement concept? So ultimately, because it's real, right? Like I always like to kind of frame it because it gets you in the right mindset to do it. So many of you are here because of these, right? So the real world, and I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, one of the things we pride ourselves on, not only this product line, but other things we've done as a group, um, is ultimately we can only solve problems when you have a candid, transparent relationship. And so one of the things, as you see with these webinars, is we're not really ShamWowing you our product. Clearly, we have a solution that brings all this together and attacks these problems and allows you to measure it. But a lot of you are in different phases of your onboarding journey, meaning you might be a super small company, or you're just looking to solve an existing bleeding point. So we like to share from just the real world perspective what's going on, and then you'll self-select accordingly. So some of the things when you wake up this morning that you're challenged with, obviously, is many of them, and it's handoffs. You still have a handoff issue, and or the customer's kind of pissed off because they're restating everything, right? Are you matching the expectations of that delivery, consistency of that? You can read the screen. These, I'm sure, resonate with you. These are challenges that all onboarders face. It's one of the reasons why our platform Engage is so successful, is because we take these head on with proven processes and ecosystems and tools to basically make these successful. But ultimately, the goal here today is for me to hopefully open up some Johari windows on the risks you need to be concerned about. Obviously, we've stated some of those already from an environmental perspective, which only amplifies these challenges. And then I'm going to get you to some of the measurement things. And I'm going to kind of Kia Camry Cadillac you, meaning start pretty simple. And then I have some advanced metrics to really drive this forward. And don't fret, as I mentioned, depending on when you're getting in and listening, all of these at the end, I will package up all of this plus additional resources that have lower level details on these. Today, I'm going to stay at about 25,000 feet because not individually knowing each one of the companies, I try to give a broad so everybody gets a value nugget. And then, of course, you can drive down into specific things. Like, so one obvious big problem we have is that conference table has a gigantic hole in the middle. And so there's a lot of risk there of somebody. I just noticed that it has nothing to do with this webinar, but I was just thinking from a risk perspective. That kind of. And has anybody actually been in a meeting where everybody's that attentive and really listening? I don't think so either. But let's tackle the challenge we can here. All right. So let's get into it. Let's have some fun. All right, onboarding risk, Johari windows, right? The stuff that you don't know that is happening, right? You can Google that Johari window. So Johari windows is some of the things for you to be thinking about, or elements that are contributing to it. So the first one, and again, I'm going to kind of go briskly through these. I'll be providing this detail because I do want a little bit of spread here because everybody is in different environments, different things. So failure to demonstrate value quickly. So this is very, very interesting. And we have a lot of clients who actually don't start making money until the client is actually using the tool. So you might be in an environment where there's a big upfront and you're charging, X to install or Y to do, So there's a ton of companies like that. If you're in, which of course is fine, still there's a risk to demonstrate that quickly. But then also there's a lot of technology players or hardware players or other groups that we work with where they actually don't start making money until the thing is fully deployed and they're getting transactional, income off that. So one of the big risks is just taking way too long and the customer loses faith in what your product offering service is doing, and they're going to turn out, or you've just completely missed their expectations and they're only going to use you for a small contracted period, churn out within a year, etc. So really understanding your client's needs and their problems and making sure you're working against those correctly. Just a risk to be aware of. I'm not going to solve everybody's problems on this, but frequently if clients come to us, and that's one of the things, we're trying to stage the launches so that very quickly they can start to see real economic value, or you're helping them connect the dots of real economic value extremely early in the onboarding process, and not 2 years from now, 15 months from now, 12 months from now, because you need momentum and you need spirit. You need positivity. I know it sounds, but you need momentum because you need the client to help propel this along internally, right, to get it over the line. Second one, huge if you're dealing, I don't care how big your company is, this is more who the hell you're selling into and obviously onboarding in. Of course, this could affect both ways, but it's cross-departmental coordination, herding the cats. We've already talked about that. extremely important on your side, but then extremely challenging on the onboarding side. And so making sure there are proper mutual plans, concepts like that. But you have to analyze your risk of how many people internally you have to herd or be involved to successfully onboard this. You need to kind of define those out. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. I did a webinar about this also, of role assignment and making sure you have a clear battle plan of the different types or roles of people inside the client you're trying to onboard in to really solve that. I can include that resource obviously here, but that's a huge risk that you have to kind of think through, because frequently it's not done well, and that trickles down into a whole lot of problems doing that. I did allude to, again, these are the risks, and then we're going to get into measurement. So another risk for you to consider is obviously garbage in, garbage out, GIGO, 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 garbage in, garbage out. And this paralyzes and can paralyze any onboarding experience with clients because of poor data collection, poor validation of that data. So let's role play just a common use case that you can think about to just solve on your end, right? Is great. Everybody's excited. Like, oh, many of you might have what we need from a client list, right? Okay, great. Well, that's just on your side of the equation. Again, remember, successful onboarding is really about you internally, the client internally, and you guys working together, right? There's really three relationships here. And so when you think of everything as having multiple relationships, your team by itself, the client's team by themselves, and then what you're working on together, right? Data collection and clean data are obviously mission critical to that. So them just getting you data doesn't mean it's good data, right? So what falsely happens a lot of the time is that data is sent, but no one reviews it on your side, or the client doesn't know really what you're asking for because they don't know your business at all. That's why they actually hired you. And so these all kind of bring up pretty important risks and areas where things can drop off, stall, really get you into a bad shape. Again, Johari window, think through those. And then, of course, we're going to show you how to measure that. But these are areas that frequently you feel like, oh, we have a good onboarding process in place. But the reality is unfortunately, the devil is in the details, right? And so just think through that a little bit. A big risk. These are kind of what I'm sharing with, are kind of the high risk areas, the things that bubble up that when you do a post, you know, review basically, and this is where you're going to start to see the common areas that are leading indicators or elements that contributed gigantically to the risk or the loss of the client. Okay. Next one is customer engagement and participation. You got to measure how actively are they working with your teams. Are they going dark right away? Are they actually progressing at a rate? Now, if you don't have infrastructure in place and a solution like Engage, obviously this is what we help clients with, but I don't care if you're doing this for whatever you're doing, your kid's lemonade stand, just make sure the people are engaging and they're transacting in a process that is obviously, you can have a leading indicator. Are things trending well or not, right? Ultimately, that's a very big piece of all this. Don't operate blind. Just don't operate blind, right? So customer engagement and participation. Again, risks. These are things that you can self-analyze yourself. Three more, and then we're going to kind of switch into basically the toolbox. There's a lot of ways of managing the risks and the math. I'm going to share with you basically what I believe and what our clients believe get you the highest bang for buck. And that's what I'm trying to do with these risks also. So next couple of things that kind of, again, if you do a post-mortem, these are going to kind of be what happens. I'll come back to that mortem stuff here in a second, but timeline and resource management. So this is interesting because you're like, timeline, resource management, of course, Joe. But what we have found, and to be a very problematic, is when you're onboarding a company, their resources, and of course for you to be efficient, you want a time band, obviously, onboarding. You can't just have your resources onboarding somebody forever. And that timeline needs to be mutual. And a lot of times what we've seen is companies are saying, oh, we're onboarding, this client. We're going to tell them, here's the timeline. It's X. But they're not openly and communicating and setting the right expectations on the new client side of, again, who they need, what data they're going to need, coaching them through that, and managing the resources and making sure they have everything on their side aligned and committed on them, and then they execute the onboarding. It's very interesting. And this is a tough challenge here because if the client isn't committed, right, to the timeline, then the chances of this is super high risk of going south. So in some use cases, I'm being very transparent, you're better off not onboarding them today. You're better onboarding them 30 days from now because they'll be committed and they'll actually get it over the line, which attributes to all of the other risks that I have in here. Think about that. I know there's going to be pressure for revenue if that's the case, but ultimately, if the onboarding goes wrong, you're not going to be generating that revenue for them at that point in time anyway. And it's going to cost you twice as much to get them out, and they're not happy, and there's burnout on their end. You get it? So that it has to be a mutual action to get that over the line. And also from a resource management perspective. And quite frankly, insider secret, by doing that, the customer then really commits their resources to your onboarding plan to make it more timely because you've established the rules of the road in a positive way of we don't want to waste anybody's time. We want to make sure you're able to be focused on this, and we want it to be a home run for us and for you, hence the mutual. Okay. All right, next item, unclear roles and responsibilities. I had kind of touched on this. We have additional resources on the site, but we're dumbfounded by how many times nobody knows who owns what, when, where, and who's responsible, not even on, literally, even on the internal side, meaning your company, and or on the customer side, okay? So on the customer side, we have a couple of resources for this, but it's ultimately like an accountability chart. And when the kickoff meeting with your client, you have to establish all these rules and not rule, no rules, roles and responsibilities, right? And get commitment. Again, mutual, very, very important. Again, a lot of this is just controlling the narrative and doing it in a way that is mutual, so both parties benefit, and then managing obviously the expectations and misalignment if there are any, and getting that out on the plate sooner, which is the last item, which is if you're going to have a problem during onboarding, let's have it happen right at the beginning, whether that was something that was misspoke from sales, basically, like complete expectation management, like we're not getting this accounting module with this, or we don't get X or Y, or whatever it is. But ultimately, you want to surface that in the beginning, or they can't commit to the timelines. Again, you're getting the idea, is watching out for those misalignments. So these risks are basically a catalog of the things that clients had come to us engage with, and obviously our platform and services help resolve these. But for your own onboarding, these are the kind of takeaways to go back, and as you're doing those postmortems, kind of think about this. So to kind of shock the system a little bit before we jump on how to measure all this, you can also flip the script. So you can do your postmortems, and obviously I hope you're talking with your team and your clients, but for fun, the next onboarding you do, which hopefully is today or tomorrow that you're kicking off, right? Just do a pre-mortem. So you and your team, before you even talk to the customer, identify the top 5 reasons why this project onboarding is going to go sideways. I think you know the answers already. I just gave them to you. But now you can try to address those with your team as a team project to help resolve them, and do it as a group for buy-in. Pre-mortem, why would this onboarding with client ABC fail? What does anybody see? And hopefully you discover a couple other nuggets within your group that might be there that you can, also solve. Of course, clearly this is what Engage helps with, but again, we're here more to help the greater good of the onboarding community, and just rising tide moves all ships, right? So JFK. So pre-mortem, if you can, manage your risks that are here. Okay, so we know the environmental problems. We already talked about it. Can't run amok. A lot of people, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of interests. Need to manage all this. Need to do it obviously in a centralized environment. Now you know what kind of the common areas of risk are. There's more, clearly. You might be saying, but Joe, what about, yeah, I get it. I agree. but it's the old bell curve. 80% of the problem, if not 90% of the problem, is going to be right in these areas. And so for the biggest bang of buck, basically go after these. Also, if you can, do a pre-mortem on that. All right. I'm going to shift gears now because we talked about the environment and we talked about the risks. Now, let's get into a little bit more of, okay, if we're doing this, how do we get better? And so I'm going to switch to this. Now, there's a lot of math here, not so much on this one, but the next slide I'll be a whatever. I'll give you a preview is pretty heavy math. Because let's just be frank. Depending on your role within the organization, there is substantial pressure on onboarding departments or onboarding in general, meaning where the economy is at or other things. There's very strong downward pressure to do more with less team members, fire team members if your department can't prove the value that your team members are providing to the organization, right? Or if you're scaling and you're growing and you want to be able, for budgetary reasons, be able to get more budget to obviously secure more clients, or not secure more clients, not sales, you know what I'm getting at, to secure more team members, then ultimately you got to bring some meat with the potatoes so that you can fight to keep your team members, to grow your team members, and then also provide very strong rationale that if the company is scaling, that with my team members, we can do X number of this with great confidence and the clients are happy and all sorts of things like that, right? So I want to contextually prepare you for why I'm presenting what I'm presenting, because we have seen these elements, these basic ones, and then some more math ones, really help in all those different use cases to make you, if you're the leader, look like a rock star. If you're an onboarding associate or a customer success associate, you can start tracking this for your own purposes, which help measure your personal development and performance. Because unfortunately, if there is a need or something of downsizing, you're able to defend your role. So this is in general, no matter who's on this call today, I think these are very, very important for an individual level and then also from a C-suite level. All right. So again, I'm going to talk about these at 30,000 foot or 25,000 feet. At the end of this webinar, like I do in every webinar, if anybody has any questions or things, not a sales meeting, I'm not going to demo you our software unless you ask me to. I'm literally, you can call me and we can go through a sesh on these or any problem you have, and I can give you just candid recommendations with massive levels of experience in different verticals and industries. All right, just being transparent. So let's get started on these. I'm going to move quick for obvious reasons, but again, we have more resources on our site, and of course, I'm available to help you break these down. Simplest one, time to onboard. How long does it take? Now, again, if it's super fast and they're mad at you, which is the last one on the screen, you might want to look at that. Speed isn't king. We want to be good, but not stupidly fast, and people are pissed or they don't know how to use the tool or service, right? There's a healthy balance here. So don't just reward on TTO. It can be a very false narrative there, right? So time to onboard, but you should be tracking that clearly. Don't want to operate blind. The second one, first time to value, a little bit different, all right? So you might be asking yourself, first time to value. Well, obviously it's when they're starting to see all the promises that your sales team has made. So how can you quickly get them to that, right? Again, some tricks of the trade to think about on your end, depending on what product or service you have. You can phase the launch or phase the onboarding so you can get to something of high value relatively quickly. It's a nice snickerdoodle to basically get them excited. Demonstrations to the leadership team who cut the contract with you, sort of like, holy cow, look at this momentum we have. This is extremely valuable. You get my point? Like, you can create sometimes a first time to value just because of a process change or how you phase it or some other things. So think about that. It's worth it if you're asking yourself. So time to onboard, I got my old number 2 out. If you see that, is you seeing it on the screen? No, the old number 2. I don't know if any of you guys still use number 2s. Yeah, the lost art. Um, so time to value, TTO, FTTV. Obviously, we're very strong in the environment for us of using mutual plans, checklists, but other experiences around our platform. So just again, I talked about it in the risk is completion rate. Like, how are we progressing well, right? Like, just are we progressing well? Um, I think you know what that means. You should be tracking it, obviously by individual level, etc. And also it gives you some, from the Johari window standpoint, kind of expected, kind of are people flowing at the right rate? What we would call kind of predictive analysis of whether or not this is trending. For you as leaders, you want to know yet red, yellow, green, of course, those kinds of things. You can do this with the combination of these, of course. That's what our platform does. But again, you can do this on whatever way you're doing it. Onboarding completion rate. Some of our clients, maybe have smaller systems or stuff like that. It's just some of them are exiting during the onboarding. If you're having that a lot, it's probably related to the things the risks we just talked about. Some expectations are really off. But some clients come to us and they have a pretty big problem there. We're able to help dramatically change the outcomes of that, just through the processes we've been talking about. Again, this is kind of churn rate during or immediately after. So they're kind of related, and everybody has different terminologies. When does churn really happen? I don't know. You guys know the hustle. Ford Chevy conversations, like blue truck, white truck, I whatever. I don't care who's involved. And reality is ultimately, Ford Chevy conversation there. And so churn rate, you got to watch out for that. And when it's happening, again, is typically related to that. And again, you should be measuring these, right? And by quarter typically is, obviously by month is good, but sometimes there's not enough throughput for that. Also, the customer engagement during onboarding. Again, these are leading indicators. Are they actually consuming? Are they signing up for the trainings correctly if you're a software, or are they logging into your tools? Like, there's a lot of things. Are they on pace with everything that you're asking them to do? So is the customer doing a lot of the stuff they need to be doing? That's going to be a red dot, kind of the item. Red dot just meaning there's a threat, to the opportunity, right? And then net promoter score. This is again kind of a debate. We actually use different type. We leverage, and our clients leverage NPSs, but I also like temperature checks throughout the process. And again, this is more, if you have a larger solution or a larger, more complex deployment, is why wait to the end. You should be kind of checking the temperature throughout the relationship. And there's some really cool things we help clients with on how to do that, when it's a combination of not only the people intently on the onboarding, but then also the leadership on both sides, making sure that everybody's namaste and that things are progressing well. So it really just is a net promoter score per se. We believe in a little bit more temperature checks. Again, it depends on the complexity of your product, but start with the simple math, right? A lot of these here are, really simple, things that you can start measuring for your team on an individual level, meaning each team player, which, if you're, really small and just getting started, you can do this all in an Excel spreadsheet. Obviously, clients come to us because we systematize this for scale, and there's infrastructure and reporting and analytics on everything, to kind of guide this. But every business and service is at different stages. So these are the initial ones. These are some, in the sphere, let's just say, of measurement. These are probably really good ones if you're really, just coming out of the gate, or trying to learn. I'd start here. These are going to get you, for some table stakes, basically, for internal meetings and areas of improvement and coaching opportunities for you. If you're a leader on this call, you're going to want to start here, because they're logically, building blocks to help with your onboarding, managing the risk, like we talked about, but then also being able to prove, basically, areas of opportunity, areas of success, kudoing, all of that, around this. And then, of course, you're doing this on every single onboarding, so that can be woven into whatever weekly meeting structure you have, or whatever, to, up level stakeholders. on both sides. Because again, it's a 3-person group. It's you guys internally, the client internally, or the new onboarding, and of course you guys working together. That mutual ecosystem needs to all three pieces need to work well. Okay, so apply those. You probably have some of them. Apply it more. Of course, we can help and brainstorm more if you like. I'm going to kind of jump to what I would think are, for some of you a little bit more advanced. And it's not advanced in a negative way. It's just, you got to kind of start, and then for a lot of our clients, they don't know how to address these just as of yet, because they just think of them as advanced as you continue to grow your team, and some elements of the team and other things. Again, there are different hats here. So if you're in the operational side of onboarding, obviously the previous slide really helps you start to bring your value around that. Then working on these with your leadership team, and if you are a leader, here a director or a VP, like some of these are again for those strategic decisions that you're in charge of making, and budget acquisition and all sorts of things to obviously drive value and demonstrate the value of your team. So one is onboarding cost per customer. Of course, this is dual sided. One is looking for efficiencies on onboarding. Obviously, that has to be connected with customers being happy, though, right? Like, again, if you sham wow me with a really small number, but then you have a high churn, or the customers aren't happy, or whatever it is, like that doesn't work. So you want, if we were the bears, the 3 bears, you want the porridge that is just right, right? And then once you figure out that porridge, then you got that kind of scale engine that you can kind of put around that, which is then working to justify those other resources or budgets. Or because I can share with you, like our infrastructure Engage, we help operationally, literally 30% more efficiency and way more engagement from the customers. But just from your team's perspective, we easily get groups to 30% more efficient based on the platform, our our systems, our products built into it, our automations, our dynamic customer experiences, our onboarding experiences we do. So we can shave a lot of time per customer, allowing your individual team members to do more. Obviously, they get your onboarding cost per customer to a healthy level, but it's not just a healthy level, it's a scalable level, meaning you're able to do more with less. So very, very important. Each company is a little different, obviously, of calculating the math. But you can just get started. And of course, we help our clients. But customer lifetime value. So this is kind of interesting. So post onboarding. So for some of you, you might envision, obviously, onboarding as just being a one-time dance, and it might be for your org, but for a lot of orgs, it's not. And there's kind of 2 ways of looking at this. It's one, so if the client, you onboard them X, but the LTV is lifetime value of the customer is measured on a 4 or 5 year cycle. Just to keep this math very simple for you, let's say they onboarded for 20K, 5 year cycle, 100,000, right? And so that's important. But then also, right, that math, and then also a lot of times these customers buy more stuff. So contract value year 1, 10, year 2, 20, year 3, 30, year 4, it's way more than 100 grand now, right? I kind of gave myself bad math, cut me some slack, but it's way more, it's way north of 150,000 now, right? Again, in some of those use cases, you also are doing smaller micro onboardings, meaning of specific modules or other things, or just in general. These are very important to help justify the value and the credibility of your onboarding team. Okay. Another one, which is a pretty strong dotted line to revenue, net new revenue, is referral rate post onboarding. Because what this allows you to do is to justify your expense on the onboarding. Because again, you can't sometimes just make onboarding super cheap. It can't, right? Like that's not, it's the porridge, just right. And then that just right makes a happy client. And that happy client also then will give you referrals. Okay. So think through that one. If you got a friend in the sales department, they might be able to help you figure this out real quickly. But you, as if you're a leader listening, you definitely can figure this out pretty quickly, which again is the sphere of your role is helping impact those direct rev numbers. Because again, I think let's just be transparent here. It's all business. In business, if you can show your relationship to revenue, whether dotted line or straight line, you're in real good position during growth of the company for budget and other things, and you also can be protected on obviously cuts if the company isn't doing well because you're directly connected, whether that's a straight line or just a dotted line, like I'm saying. Okay. Um, Last but not least, on the more complicated advanced metrics, is the upsell expansion rate. So again, if you have a product or service that is around that sphere of things, you want to basically decouple that. So you might have an onboarding experience that costs X. So X, what I mean by this is like we were literally just having a call with a client last night, and so their first onboarding is pretty substantial. It's a larger product, and then they have kind of micro onboardings after that. But each one of those micro onboardings is for a new module or configuration, even professional services. Like they're doing lots of different things with the customers, even hardware. They got hardware, professional, whatever it might be. Those are like ongoing micro onboardings, but they're all adding to the LTV, lifetime value of the client. They're also providing additional experiences, obviously, because they might not be as complex as the original, but they're equally as important to all of these other things that are going on. And you might have different costs for those too, right? So again, keep it simple at the beginning, but depending on the complexity or the type of onboarding experience, you might want to classify them as initial setup, and then maybe it's module setup only. I think you're getting the drift of where I'm going here. You can get more complicated when you need to, but ultimately, they all can help you make more effective decisions and make sure that the environment is up to snuff, because maybe those experiences are very costly and you didn't know that. You can unpack, and obviously, you need the analytics and insights to do that. Obviously, that's why platforms like ours are extremely popular. But I do like to share the concepts because you can use these at all varying levels. So let's recap a little bit here. So successful onboarding. Right out the gate, the risks, you got massive environmental risks, right? You got too many people, need centralized information, a lot of cats, right? You need to move a lot of data back and forth. And then I shared with you, if you pre-mortem or post-mortem any of your onboarding experiences fairly, not just internally for you, but also candid conversations with your customers, they're probably going to bubble up around those risks that I walked you guys through. And then if you're wanting to measure this, which you should transparently, this side, basic metrics, get you over the line, get you started, allows you to have effective communication and collaboration with your own team and also clients, right? And then as you want to ratchet up to more advanced, you can get into elements like this, which really help then provide you the purview that is needed for the continued growth and defense of your team and the value of your team, right? So I'll wrap up here. I appreciate everybody's time as usual, as many of you have done. We got many ways to engage, and many of you are in different phases. It's not our first rodeo. The idea here is you can go to our website. Obviously, you can get our white papers and insights. I'll include some in this email based on the topics that I'll do a follow up. Obviously, email out to everybody. Obviously, we got a mega ton of other webinars that relate to many of these topics that I talked about. If you're ready to engage and you're actively looking for a solution to help take your organization to another level, you can just go to Proteus/schedule and meet with members of our team that are going to help you with that. But a lot of you, because you're in different phases of that, just want a personal one-on-one brainstorm literally with me, Joey. That's my email there. Hit me up with an email. My assistant will follow up with you also just to see if you want a one-on-one. I'm not going to demo you the product. You're going to tell me a problem you have and ideas you have or whatever. If you tell me to demo the product, of course, I'm not going to demo you the product, but it's not a sales process. We're here to help solve problems. We are solving problems for tons of people. but we know everybody's at different phases of their business journey and product journey and everything. Of course, I'll end with clearly. I think many of you know because you've been on our website. We do have an unbelievable platform called Engage, which is heavily used in complex sales, the last 25% of the sale where there's a lot of communication and collaboration, the handoff, onboarding, and obviously account growth. So we cover those mission critical revenue areas for organizations. We also layer on top of that not just platform, we also provide many of our clients coaching and optimization to help guide them rapidly through to success. Also, because we have a lot of experience, so it's just not platform; it's also industry vertical specific experience and growth plans to help you move fast. So I appreciate the time. Please consume all of our other resources and things. And again, if you need anything or you want to, again, just brainstorm, just email me there and look forward to continuing the conversation. Hope all of you have a good rest of your day and attack the rest of the week. Thank you.